So I've already tried to record this like 4,000 times. It feels like I've got a 2-year-old grandson lives with us, and we're going like he just bangs on everything. So I had the gate turned up way too high, and I didn't have the ability to control my audio. So it almost sounded like dip 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 dip. So anyway, covering what I learned with a little bit today with the Oscurart's Bake PBR. The first thing I'm doing here is I've got several planes here. The plane is not set up to the UV. The UV set to the plane. So the material is holding an image texture set to UV, and then I'm using the mapping node to assign the location. The second one that I was doing there just a minute ago, that one I ripped the edges in the middle. So I did a loop cut both directions, ripped them with the V key, and then actually moved them to put the inside pixels on the outside, so that way I can bake out the first one to get the result of that UV alignment. So you're selecting the first one, and then select the second one. The second one's active, and then I just go in and bake PBR. And the base colors, the only thing being selected, because that's all I'm worried about at this point. This is for establishing stuff that's going to be usable as a tiled texture, and that's an attempt. The image I was using was not supposed to be tiled, and I was just trying to make a demonstration. I end up finding that I've actually got results from prior, so I go ahead and bake it and load it back up. The interesting part really comes into play when we get to the third set, the third collection. See, the second collection is the one with, if the set has the same mapping, but like I said, it physically has been moved so that it has the insides on the outside. Baking that one gets the result from that. So that becomes a second image that comes into play when we get to the third collection. The third collection is a simple plane, but it's been subdivided in an intense amount. So that way we've got vertices that are vertex, I don't know, plurals of vertex. So we end up with enough to where when we paint with the vertex paint, we can make a black and white stencil, and then it naturally has like a gradient, a soft edge to it, because it's vertex paint. But because it's vertex paint, we have alternate tools there. So we have a blur tool, and we have a smear tool. So I used a little bit of that, and here we load up. The top one needs to be the one from the rotating the tires. That's the second collection. There is what I called it, rotate tires, because you're moving them opposite directions, kind of like you change tires on your car. And then the second one on the bottom, which is actually going to be on top, would be the bake from Maine. And when I put it together, then I started wondering if I had it wrong, so I kind of flipped back and forth until I get it right. Still have issues with that, figuring out which direction the mix is going. Essentially, what I did with the vertex paint is to then paint with black and white back and forth, and so you can see a little bit there what the result is when you're in the material preview mode and you paint a little bit. And then I go back and I try to paint with a little bit of gray, kind of mixing, and it's not quite the same as what I was hoping for, so I kind of went backwards. The thing about the vertex paint is it's an element that you can actually change up. So you can make multiple vertex color layers or sets, and change that up so you can make variations and bake them out separately, so you can have different tileable versions coming off of the same setup here. And baking just takes a couple seconds. Basically, like there's like 9 seconds, like 10 seconds for a bake, but that's for just the one color or the one channel. Call it a channel, base color. Okay, so the other cool thing is that these are baking to EXR, so it's pretty decent size. And here I go and add in two sets. So I add up another plane, and I've got to I get the idea of just selecting and adding the, linking the material. So shift, select the other one, and then Control L and linked, and then they get the material. And then here we're going to add in isolation mode, add two array modifiers, so that way we can see what's going on with how it compares to the other one. This one, change the deal, so make X and Y and 3x3, so then you get a feel for it. And you know what you're looking for, so you know that no matter what, a tileable texture is going to be tileable. It's going to have some, unless it's a perfectly clean thing, it's still going to have some what you call it, some amount of visibility where you're going to see a pattern. But here I take the one that was the original mapping, the output, and set that one up, and then I realize I don't have to add the arrays again. I can just make same way I do with the material. I can connect the modifiers, so it makes a copy the modifiers over to this object. And if you look at it, yes, there's a pattern over there on the right, but the pattern is not quite as geometric. It's still a pattern, and I can't get away from that. It would be at that point that I would want to go with something that would be more object specific, where the full object or the full unwrap for whatever would have, because if I was doing it by face it would be fine, but then the whole of it would be better to have a secondary version that you can then turn around and stencil again with vertex paint or another image. And it's at this point that I decide I'm going to go ahead and try to add in another file. And I still do think that the one on the left from the original image does have more of a geometric pattern. You can see 2 lines going on the X and 3 lines going on the Y, and it's just, that's ugly. But here we're going to try to do something else with the baker to show you what the baker's actually designed for, which is pretty cool. And the Node Wrangler is a very good piece of script. I like it a lot. I just have to get used to using it because I've gotten so ingrained in setting up things and making copies of node groups that I forgot that I can just add in stuff on the fly. So here I go and get another texture. I gotta switch the thumbnails, and I get something that's my typical metal-ish kind of, not square, not UV. We set up to box and blend and get something nice. It's got a lot of scratches and stuff, and I kind of like that kind of texture. It just does something for me. And here I go about trying to move things, and I forget what I've selected, and it just gets to be a pain. But then I realize I got to move everything out of the way anyway. Okay, so what we're going to do here is modify this thing by adding an RGB to black and white node. And from there, we're going to then add a color RGB curves node. And the curves, I'm going to jack that up and just squeeze it, so we can try to get something with some high contrast and high end parts that are going to stand out. Just because it's kind of like just forcing contrast. I don't want to have to totally redo it and by painting it in manually. So taking the one image that's already mapped, it lines up, it's already got the details, you kind of just modify it here inside the tree. Now run that to metallic, and then it's a matter of adding an invert node, the color invert node, and run that to the roughness, and then we're going to add in a bump node, because we're going to take the same input or the same output from the RGB curves to the bump, and I run it pretty low. I run it 0.25 or 0.2 or something like that, and 0.125 because I don't want it to be too crazy. And then run that to the normal, and then connect it, and we see it, and it's not bad. Except for it needs to be inverted, I think. There you go. And so then it's got like it's rubbed down into it, and it's actually kind of showing some of the metal underneath, and the rest of it's kind of a little rough. It's more worn. So then here I'm just changing the colors. I'm trying to saturate it. It's not trying to get something to come out of it. And then I end up getting frustrated with that. There's not enough contrast for color wise. So I add in RGB color node again, and then I flip around. I normally end up doing an overlay or color or something. Like, I try not to go crazy with it, but it usually ends up doing that anyway. And then I think I went with soft light, I think. Yeah, so it's colorful and something that you can see. And that's the main point, was I wanted to show that you can do all of that inside the tree. There was no texture painting on that. It's cool, but there was no texture painting. And we didn't even go about using a secondary texture to stencil with any other things. There was nothing there to stencil. But you would have used like an RGB, a color mix node, and you would have used like a secondary box mapped deal. And that's where I just to be careful, I cleared out the images from the previous one out of there, or I was going to, and then I decided I'll take a chance. So this is the point where it really got noisy. So I renamed the material to make sure there was a name like Suzanne Green, and then I went back and moved her to a collection and renamed her. But I tried to move there, and that muted the RGB mix. So I had to get my mouse back where it belonged. Putting her in a collection meant that I was hoping that either the material or the collection would help name the PBR maps. So then we go in there and we start watching, and I think it's like 6 seconds for the color, and almost 6 seconds there. So it's not taking too long, and we're already up to the point where it's making the normal map. And the interesting part is the normal map is going to be a real normal map. So instead of using a bump node, you're using a normal map node, and you're using that into the normal, and it sounds like repetitive, but it's much cleaner. So here, go ahead and I save that material just in case I need to come back, get rid of it, add a new one. Then I realize, okay, add texture setup again, and then for some reason on the second time around it adds something to the volume. I don't know what's going on with that. So I try to get rid of all that, get it out of the way, and then we go about loading up all those maps. And then I've got to remember where they are, hope that they're there, and then voila, found them. I got happy. So then I just have to load them up one at a time. And I think there's a script that's actually going to let you load them up like that. I'm not sure which one I'm not sure if it's going to do that. I don't know if that's the add principled setup there, which I'll have to learn. But just understand, I'm taking way too long here in the video to do this. There's probably a very fast way to do it, and I'm not doing it. But the cool part for me is here where we actually load the normal map, and we use the normal map node, because that's much nicer of a look as far as I think I kind of was expecting to be like an option for color and non-color, and I think they took that option out of there because it wasn't really supposed to be used that way. The nice thing there is I'm claiming that it's exactly the same. It may or may not be, but it's pretty close. And it's interesting, and this is a clean enough scenario to where you can use these maps with your material in your game engine. So that's the main thing. It's the add-on is free, and so I'll put the link in the video and the video description, and hopefully this will help somebody. It already makes me smile, because it means that I can set up some interesting stuff for objects and robots and spaceships and whatnot, and then really just bake everything down and get unique stuff all the way around. Well, thanks a lot for sharing, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.